Here's something that quietly happened to millions of conservative investors over the last 2 years. Their supposedly safe money lost more value than if they just left it in a savings account. Welcome to a conversation that could genuinely change how you think about your money. Today we're digging into the bond mistake that is silently draining portfolios across the country. And more importantly, we're talking about what you can actually do about it. Stay until the end because the last piece of this puzzle is the part most people miss entirely. Let's start with a question. When you think about bonds, what's the first word that comes to mind? For most people, it's something like safe, steady, reliable, conservative. And that makes sense. Bonds have been marketed and taught as the defensive player in your financial lineup for so long that questioning them almost feels irresponsible. Your financial advisor probably talked about the classic 60-40 split, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, as if it were handed down from some financial mountaintop on stone tablets. But here's where things get interesting. That 60-40 model was built for a different era, an era of declining interest rates, low inflation, and a particular economic environment that made bonds genuinely powerful. When rates fall, existing bond prices rise, so bondholders got to enjoy both income and capital gains. Beautiful, simple, effective. But that environment has shifted dramatically, and a lot of investors haven't gotten the memo. Let me explain the core mechanical problem that's quietly eating your returns. When interest rates rise, bond prices fall. This is not speculation or opinion, it's just math. If you hold a bond paying 2% and new bonds are being issued at 5%, nobody wants your 2% bond unless you sell it at a discount. That discount is your loss. And over the past few years, we've seen one of the most aggressive interest rate cycles in modern history. Investors holding long-duration bonds watch the value of what they thought was their safe money drop significantly. Not stock market crash dramatically in the news, but steadily, quietly, consistently. And this is the first major mistake: duration risk. Most everyday investors have no idea what duration actually means in practical terms. They just know they own bonds or a bond fund. But duration is essentially your sensitivity to interest rate changes. The longer your bond's duration, the harder it gets hit when rates move against you. A bond fund with a 10-year average duration might lose around 10% of its value for every 1% rise in rates. That's not a trivial number. That's real money leaving your portfolio while you sleep, under the banner of conservative investing. Now here's something that should genuinely frustrate you when you hear it. Many investors who shifted money into bond funds during the past decade to protect themselves from stock market volatility actually ended up experiencing significant losses anyway. Different kind of losses, quieter losses, losses that don't make headlines or trigger emotional reactions, but losses nonetheless. The psychological trap here is that because bonds aren't associated with danger in our minds, we don't watch them as carefully, we don't set alerts, we don't panic sell, we just quietly hold while the value erodes. Before we go deeper on the solutions, I want to mention something that fundamentally changed how I think about all of this. If you're serious about understanding where real financial security actually comes from, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki is one of those books that genuinely rewires your perspective. The link is in the comments below. Even just starting it will make you see your investment decisions through a completely different lens. Now let's talk about the second mistake, and this one is connected to inflation in a way that compounds the problem. Even when bonds are doing their job, which is to say they're holding their nominal value and paying out interest, inflation can still be absolutely destroying their real value. If your bond pays 3% annually, but inflation is running at 4%, you are technically losing purchasing power every single year. Your account statement might show growth in dollar terms, but in terms of what that money can actually buy you in retirement, you're moving backwards. This inflation erosion is something that earlier generations of investors didn't have to worry about as much. For long stretches of the late 20th century, bond yields were high enough and inflation stable enough that the math worked in bond investors' favor. That's changed. And the painful irony is that the people most reliant on bonds, those approaching retirement who shifted heavily into fixed income to protect their nest egg, are often the people most exposed to this inflation drain. Think about what you're actually trying to accomplish with the safe portion of your portfolio. The goal isn't just to avoid losing money on paper. The goal is to preserve and grow purchasing power. That's a much more demanding standard. And when you hold that up as the real benchmark, a lot of traditional bond allocations start to look like they're failing at the fundamental job you hired them to do. The third mistake is less about bond mechanics and more about behavioral psychology. It's this: investors treat their bond allocation as a set it and forget it zone. They rebalance stocks, they research equities, they pay attention to market conditions on the growth side of their portfolio. But the bonds, those just sit there, untouched, unquestioned. And this passive attitude is exactly what makes duration creep and inflation erosion so damaging over time. By not actively managing that portion of your portfolio, you're essentially letting a silent problem get louder and louder without ever addressing it. Here's what sophisticated investors and institutional money managers actually do differently. They think about bond allocation in terms of specific purposes: short duration bonds for near-term stability and emergency-adjacent reserves, inflation-protected securities for preserving purchasing power over the medium term. And they continuously reassess the interest rate environment to decide whether holding more in cash equivalent instruments makes more sense than locking into longer maturities. They're not rigid, they're strategic. One practical shift that many financial professionals have been recommending is what's called a bond ladder. Instead of dumping everything into a single bond fund, you stagger maturities across multiple time horizons. Maybe some bonds mature in 1 year, some in 3, some in 5. As the shorter ones mature, you reinvest at whatever the current rates are. This gives you exposure to rising rates over time, reduces your overall duration risk, and creates a more predictable income stream. It's not flashy, but it works because it aligns the mechanics of bonds with how you actually need to use money over time. Another consideration that often gets overlooked is the role of I-bonds and Treasury inflation-protected securities. These instruments exist specifically to address the inflation problem we talked about earlier. Their interest adjustments are tied to inflation measures, which means when inflation is high, the effective return goes up accordingly. They're not perfect for every situation, and they come with their own limitations around liquidity and caps. But they deserve a place in the conversation for anyone seriously concerned about inflation eating away at their fixed income returns. Now let's come back to the bigger picture, because all of this brings us to a question that might be uncomfortable. Are bonds even the right tool for what you think you're using them for? The traditional answer of use bonds to balance portfolio risk and generate income deserves to be challenged and tested against your actual financial situation, your actual timeline, and the actual economic environment you're investing in right now, not the one your grandfather invested in. This is exactly the kind of thinking that Robert Kiyosaki pushes in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and honestly, it's why that book has remained relevant for so many years. The copy linked below in the comments isn't just another personal finance read that tells you to budget better and save more. It completely reframes what assets and liabilities actually mean, which completely changes how you evaluate every single instrument in your portfolio, including bonds. If you've been on the fence about whether or not to grab it, let this be the moment you make that decision. The investors who win in uncertain economic times are the ones who took the time to upgrade their financial education first. And the price of a book is frankly nothing compared to the cost of an investment mistake made from outdated thinking. Get the link in the comments, grab a copy, and you'll understand immediately why so many people consider it one of the most important financial books they've ever read. Let's bring this home with something actionable. If you're currently holding a significant bond allocation and you haven't reviewed it in the past 12 months, that's your first task. Look at the duration of what you're holding. If you're in a broad bond fund, find the average effective duration number in the fund's fact sheet. This tells you your sensitivity to rate changes. From there, consider whether the duration matches your actual investment timeline and risk tolerance. Second, calculate the real return on your bonds. Take the yield, subtract current inflation, and see what you're actually getting in purchasing power terms. If that number is negative or barely positive, you have a decision to make about whether that allocation is truly serving its intended purpose or just creating a feeling of safety without the actual substance behind it. Third, consider whether a ladder or inflation-protected instruments belong in your strategy. These aren't exotic tools. They're widely available through most brokerage accounts and are worth understanding, even if you ultimately decide they're not right for your situation. Knowledge of what's available is the foundation of making better decisions. The bond mistake isn't one single catastrophic decision. It's a slow accumulation of passive assumptions that haven't been re-examined as the world changed around them. It's the belief that because something felt safe, it is safe. It's confusing nominal stability with real financial security. And it's the quiet complacency of thinking that the defensive side of your portfolio doesn't need attention. Financial security isn't built on autopilot. It's built on staying educated, asking the right questions, and being willing to update your thinking when the evidence demands it. The people who get this right aren't necessarily smarter or luckier. They're just paying closer attention and using better frameworks for evaluating their choices. If this video helped you see your portfolio from a different angle, hit the like button right now, because it genuinely helps this content reach more people who need to hear it. And if you want to keep building this kind of financial clarity, subscribing takes 2 seconds and means you won't miss what we're covering next. Seriously, hit that subscribe button because we're going deeper on portfolio strategy in upcoming videos, and you'll want to be here for it. The quiet drain on your portfolio doesn't have to stay quiet. Now you know where to look and what to do about it. And that awareness right there is already putting you ahead of most people who own bonds without ever asking a single question about what those bonds are actually doing for them.